I have with me Cynthia Hauk from Mindful Creative Muse. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what creative art is and something that people just often misunderstand.
Yeah, great questions. So, mindful art really is combining mindfulness or meditation practices with really simple art activities, often drawing, painting, or collage. The main focus is on the process, not on the final product. And I think that that's really one of the myths that can come up, or even barriers. Is this feeling that I hear people express of, I'm not creative, or I'm not an artist, or I'd love to try that, but I'm going to do it wrong, or I don't know how to do it right. And so that's why my heart really loves these practices, because there's so much permission around giving ourselves permission to express ourselves without that judgment.
Mm.
So anyone can do it and try it, and there's really deep benefits to them.
I understand the person that says, I'm going to do it wrong. That sounds great. I'm not a creative person. When I worked with one of your videos, it took a lot for me. I had to get out the piece of paper. I was like, do I have the right pen? Maybe I don't have the right pen. And then you even said, this pen is fine. It's okay if you use this pen. Like, I really felt like you were talking directly to me as I hear you describe that, is really engaging people in the creative process just to be engaged in the creative process with no expectation of outcome.
Absolutely. Yeah, I often encourage my students and say, we might end up loving what we create. And if we do, that's a really lovely bonus.
Mm.
And that the real intention and focus is, can I be in this practice in a way where I can embrace all parts of myself, everything that wants to be expressed right now? And I love that you said that you resonated with that struggle. And I resonate with it as well. That I think the inner critic, or that feeling of wanting to do something right, is really strong for many of us. I think it's part of the human experience. And so I connect with it really deeply, and is largely why I love this work, and how I can always come back to that giving permission, because I need it as well. So
Yeah.
I think that largely with mindful art activities, there's a few things that I'm really excited about that can happen. Is that it offers this container for us to tend to our own self-care through creativity, but the ultimate intention is to give ourselves a space that's just for us, that we can relax into, and that we
Mhm.
can express ourselves.
I'm curious around how you bring your clients' bodies into the creative process and how you see the value of our body as it relates to creativity.
I love that question. Yeah, so largely why these practices are different from if we were to sit down and just draw or paint is that they are embodied mindfulness practices. And I know those words can sound really big, and a lot of students I work with don't have previous meditation experience, or wouldn't consider themselves to be meditators, or to even be comfortable typically with breath meditation or breath practices. I find it offers an easier access point into the body and into the breath. So largely with my online classes or trainings, before we even begin the creative practice, we typically will start with an awareness meditation of either the breath or a really simple body scan, which I find really effective to tune into what's happening in our bodies in a way where it feels accessible. So there's lots of different techniques that I use, but largely we begin with the breath and the body before we create. And that's so that what we are creating, the marks we are making, is coming from those sensations, from what
Mm.
we're experiencing in our bodies. And then we can find meaning in the marks we're making. So usually I often say with mindful art activities, the words arise, but they tend to come after we're in our bodies and after we create. And then we
Mm.
can make meaning of our experience in a way that might just feel a little less daunting or intimidating or overwhelming.
You know, the critic is always coming from our head. You don't need to think your way through creative art and expression. It really does come from the sensations in the body. Speaking of bodies, has your relationship with yours changed over time?
Absolutely. I discovered originally intuitive collage and soul collage when I was going through cancer treatment. At the time, I was going through radiation, so I couldn't touch any sort of electronics or have any sort of interactions with other people. And so I was looking for analog ways that I could fill my time, right? I was in pain post-surgery. I was alone. I was trying to find things that I could do, partially to distract myself from that pain, and discovered soul collage, which is a collage process typically done with magazines. And as I was exploring that practice, it goes very deep. It's really lovely, and allows, through the imagery and through being present with ourselves in the moment, these really deep meanings from the body and from ourselves to emerge. And I immediately fell in love, and then also discovered other practices that deepened through meditation and yoga and other mindful art activities. And I've found over the years, the more I give myself space to explore those practices and ultimately give myself space to be with my body and to express whatever my body is experiencing. And I find that for my students as well. And I have noticed the more someone does mindful art activities, there is this sort of softening into being with the body and with giving ourselves permission to express, because it may feel really uncomfortable when we first begin. And so over time, there tends to be that softening where it becomes a bit easier.
Thank you. That's really powerful. It sounds like it helped you accept. Did it help you accept what was going on?
Yeah, I think the word that comes to mind for me is grief, that a lot of mindful art activities can really help to hold the multitude of emotions that come with grief. And the soul collage practice, but also I teach a different practice called mandalas, which is basically like having two circles or mandalas that merge together. And it is largely about noticing these conflicted parts of ourselves, or conflicted pieces that we hold with grief, and creating space for the fact that we may simultaneously also experience joy or gratitude, or hope, amidst all of those things that also feel really sometimes soul crushing or heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had a quote on your website that I just saw that I love, which is trust the process. What does that mean for you? Like, where have you really known that when you trust the process, like that's just truth?
So I'll share another quote that was actually from one of my art professors when I was doing my master's. And she would often say, she was a painter and did these huge, beautiful abstract paintings. And she would often invite us to, quote unquote, collaborate with chance. And when I consider and hold that truth of trusting the process, it's largely also inviting in possibilities of the unknown and collaborating with chance, and knowing that whatever emerges, that I myself or anyone who's doing this type of work is already whole and complete exactly how we are. Ultimately, the trusting the process is just being confident in whatever is here right now for me in this moment, and whatever wants to be expressed, that does decide to come out and be expressed, is absolutely perfect as it is.
Yeah, exactly. I love all of that. And what you brought up around wholeness and completeness, it's the opposite of the inner critic, isn't it?
Brene Brown, who I love, she talks a lot about shame resilience and the inner critic, but she shares that typically in her research, 80% of children have, as adults, have memories when they were a child of having some sort of shame story around their creativity.
Mm.
And so there's this returning, I think, through mindful art activities where we can not eliminate any of those inner critic thoughts or tapes, but how can we be with and embrace some of those inner critic thoughts while also recognizing that we're imperfectly perfect and whole right now.
I love the work you're doing. I'm so glad to hear more about it.
I hope you found this interesting and inspiring. For more videos like this, subscribe, and I will see you in another video.